Bella sat in her kennel, frozen, eyes trained on the door from which they'd just taken Max. But for the first time since they'd been brought to the shelter, she was all alone. Her body shook, ears pressed back. She whined softly, a sound so heartbreaking that each volunteer froze. Story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today, and if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. Max barked wildly on the other side of the shelter, deep, desperate barks that echoed in the hallways. He scratched at the kennel door, unwilling to relent. They flashed around, frantically looking for Bella. "What's going on?" one volunteer shouted as she ran toward the kennels. The answer was straightforward but heartbreaking. Max and Bella were separated for the first time, and neither knew quite how to cope. Max's barking became more insistent, each bark panicky. Bella was pressed against the door with wide eyes. It was like she was waiting for Max to return, because that's what he always did. But this time, he didn't. Because the shelter staff had made the difficult decision to separate them in hopes of finding them homes more quickly. Bonded pairs were very difficult to adopt together, and room in the shelter was limited. "They're going to adjust," the manager of the shelter had said. "Dogs always do." But Max and Bella weren't ordinary dogs. They had been through everything together: storms, hunger, the risks of the streets. For as long as anyone could remember, they had been each other's only family. And now that bond was being ripped apart, Bella refused to eat. Her once bright, inquisitive eyes turned vacant and far away. She hardly moved, her body balled in the corner of her kennel. So did Max, becoming weaker by the hour. He barked himself hoarse and paced nervously. It was over and over, his head snapping up every time a door opened, his face a flickering display of hope. Then disappointment when he registered that Bella wasn't there. "We have to put them back together," one volunteer finally said, her voice cracking. "They're coming apart without each other." The staff hesitated. It wasn't part of the plan, but it was obvious. This thing was not going to work. When they finally unlocked Bella's kennel and returned her to Max, the difference was instant. Bella perked up and ran to him, wagging her tail for the first time in days. Max cuddled her, sighing deep and contented. Everyone in the room fell silent and stared in awe as these two dogs met eye to eye. It was a reminder of something strong, something unbreakable. "They belong together," a staff member said softly. But ensuring they stayed together meant dealing with a new challenge: finding someone willing to take them both. Days passed into weeks, and then into months. And as hope seemed lost, a stranger walked into the shelter. What they didn't know is that this person would change everything. Bella curled up beside Max, her body finally relaxed after the longest day of her life. The shelter had learned an important lesson. There was no way they could separate them. But as space filled up, and as adoption started to mature, another problem was on the horizon. "We have to find them a home together," the shelter manager said, sighing deeply. "But bonded pairs are seldom adopted. It's not going to be easy." The staff adored Max and Bella, but they couldn't escape the bitter reality. Most people looking to adopt were interested in one dog, not two. Days passed, then weeks. Max and Bella watched as other dogs came and went, each dog being adopted into a family, each dog further behind them. Bella began getting anxious again. Her bright eyes dimmed a little as she started to circle the kennel, peering toward the door as if waiting for her cue. Max remained calm, his gentle watchfulness anchoring her, but no one came for them. Until one rainy afternoon. It was quiet in the shelter, the sound of raindrops pattering gently against the windows. A man came through the front doors, his coat soaked. He glanced around the shelter, sweeping his eyes across the rows of kennels until they stopped at Max and Bella. "What's their story?" he asked, stepping closer. One of the volunteers told him everything: their bond, their struggles, the failed attempts to separate them. The man knelt in front of their kennel, examining them closely. Max was the first to step forward, his tail wagging slowly, his eyes calm and steady. Bella kept a pace behind him, her head nestled against his back. "They're not going to do great separated," the volunteer said. "They've seen each other through too much." The man nodded, then put on a thoughtful expression. "I have some thinking to do," he added quietly, and with that, he left the door. The staff looked at each other, worried. "He's not coming back," one of them said. But they were wrong. The next morning, right as the shelter opened, the man came back. This time he was gripping a leash in either hand and sporting a warm smile. "He wouldn't leave my mind," he said. "They need to stay together, then that's what we'll do. I'll take them both." A wave of relief and joy went through the shelter. As they helped finalize the adoption paperwork, staff members acted as emotional supporting bookends for Max and Bella, who seemed to have already matured into the next chapters of their lives. But as they celebrated, the vet couldn't shake a feeling of concern. "They've been through a lot," the man told him. "It may take them a while to settle in, but believe me, it's worth it." The man nodded. "I'm not in a rush. All the time they will need." Then, with that, Max and Bella walked right out of the shelter together, tails in sync. They were free for the first time in months, but their story was not at an end, because sometimes the biggest challenges emerge after the rescue, and Max and Bella were about to confront the greatest test of all: learning how to trust the world once more. The ride home was quiet except for the sound of rain tapping against the car windows. Max sat calmly in the back seat, his eyes focused on the passing scenery. Bella, however, couldn't sit still. She moved back and forth, pressing her nose against the window, then glancing nervously at Max for reassurance. "It's okay, Bella," the man said gently, his voice calm and steady. "You're safe now. You're going home." The word home felt unfamiliar to both dogs. They had never had a real home, just streets, shelters, and temporary places that never lasted. But this time, things were different. When the car pulled into the driveway, Max and Bella stepped out hesitantly, their paws pressing into soft grass for the first time in months. The house was cozy, with warm light spilling from the windows and the faint smell of fresh bread in the air. Bella froze at the doorstep, her body tense. She glanced back at Max, unsure. Max gave her a reassuring nudge, his tail wagging slowly, encouraging her to take the next step. And just like that, they crossed the threshold together. Inside, the man led them to a spacious living room with a soft blanket and 2 bowls of fresh water waiting for them. Max immediately walked over and lay down on the blanket, letting out a contented sigh. Bella stayed close, her eyes scanning every corner of the room. The man knelt down beside them, his hand resting gently on Max's head. "This is your home now," he said softly. "No more cages, no more running. You're safe." For the first time in what felt like forever, Bella relaxed. She curled up beside Max, resting her head on his back, just as she had done so many times before. The days that followed were full of small victories. At first, Max adjusted quickly. He explored the house confidently, his tail wagging constantly. Bella, however, needed more time. Loud noises made her jump, and sudden movements sent her scurrying to Max's side. But no matter what, Max was always there, calm, patient, and steady. One morning, while the man was sipping his coffee, he noticed something remarkable. Bella was playing. She had found an old tennis ball under the couch and was gently nudging it toward Max, her tail wagging ever so slightly. Max responded immediately, picking up the ball and trotting over to her. The two dogs played together in the living room, their joyful barks filling the house with life. The man watched, a smile spreading across his face. "That's it, Bella," he whispered. "You're starting to trust again." But as the days turned into weeks, the man realized that Bella's healing wasn't just about adjusting to her new home. It was about healing old wounds, too. One evening, as he sat reading on the couch, he heard a soft whimper. He turned to see Bella standing by the front door, her eyes sad and distant. Max immediately got up, walking over to her and nudging her gently. Bella leaned into him, her body trembling slightly. She still remembers, the man thought, his heart breaking a little. The streets, the fear, the uncertainty. He knelt beside her, stroking her head softly. "It's okay, girl," he said. "You don't have to be afraid anymore." Bella looked up at him, her eyes full of questions. Could she trust this new life? Could she really believe that it was hers to keep? Max seemed to answer for her, resting his head on her shoulder. His calm presence was enough to remind her of one simple truth. As long as they were together, they could face anything. The man stayed with them until Bella finally settled down, her breathing steady once more. He knew it wouldn't be easy. Healing never was. But he also knew that with time, patience, and love, Max and Bella would find their way. And this time, they wouldn't have to do it alone. Bella had come a long way. There was no denying that. Every day in her new home was a series of small victories, from playing with Max to cautiously exploring the backyard. But trust does not develop overnight, and Bella had her share of moments when the ghosts of her past returned to haunt her. The man felt it most on his walks. Max walked proudly next to him, sniffing everything, while Bella was lagging behind, scared at every vehicle, noise, or sudden movement. She flinched at the hoarse bark of a dog from a neighboring yard, seeking solace by putting herself closer to Max. "We'll take our time," the man said gently, pulling in the leash and crouching at her level. "You don't have to rush." Bella's gaze connected with his, wide and questioning. She took a step forward, slowly, moved by the trust she had in Max, the trust he never broke, the trust that kept carrying her forward. Back at the house, Max was her steady rock. He was the one who appeared to read her discomfort before anyone else, always stepping between Bella and whatever made her squirm. When the garbage truck rolled past the house one day, Bella went still, her ears pinned back. Max walked over to where she was seated and stood by her until the sound faded away. "But you're her keeper," the man said, admiring. "You're always keeping an eye out for her." Through the rocks and the tumult, something beautiful started happening as Bella's bond with her new owner strengthened. It was not without difficulty. There were bumps in the road, some signs that Bella was still distancing herself. But as the days rolled on, she opened up a bit more. One evening, after dinner, the man was sitting on the sofa with a book. Max lay at his feet, head atop the man's shoes. Bella stood still at the edge of the room, watching them from afar. The man patted the couch cushion next to him. "Come on, Bella, it's okay." For one long moment, Bella froze, her eyes glancing over to Max as though she was looking for approval. Max wagged his tail as if to encourage her. At last, Bella took a tentative step forward, then another, until she stood beside the couch. She propped her chin on the cushion and gazed upward at the man with hesitating yet yearning eyes. "My girl," he said softly as he stroked her head, "you're safe here. Always." Bella squeezed her eyes shut, leaning into his palm. It prompted a small act with huge significance. For the first time, she wasn't only surviving, she was starting to trust. In the coming weeks, Bella thrived. She learned to follow butterflies in the yard, bark happily when the mailman came, and cuddle up on the couch for movie night. Max was always by her side, always there to soothe her when the world became overwhelming. But life sometimes has a way of putting even the strongest bonds to the test. One afternoon, while they were playing in the backyard, a thunderclap split the sky. The storm swept in fast. The sky, gray as rain, fell in heavy sheets. Casey stood rigid, paralyzed in place as she shook with fright. Thunderstorms were one of her greatest fears, a reminder of nights alone in the cold, with no shelter, nowhere to hide. Max sensed her panic, rushed to her side, nudging her gently. He gave a little bark, as if saying, "It's okay, I'm here." The man jumped out, grabbing Bella in his arms. Her body shook with rage, but his voice was calm. "It's just a storm, Bella. We're safe inside." Max kept right on their heels as they walked back inside the house. Bella was curled up on her bed, her eyes wide with fear, but she didn't hide this time. She stayed near Max and the man, her breathing gradually regularizing as the storm continued outside. It was also a reminder that healing was not a straight line. There would be setbacks, times when they were afraid and uncertain. But Bella was not alone, after all. In the silence, Max leaned against her, centering her yet again. And in that moment, the storm outside didn't feel so scary after all. The man knelt next to them, his heart full. "We've got you, Bella," he said softly. "And we always will." The storm had moved on, but it brought more than puddles and wet grass. It also brought progress of a different sort. Bella had challenged her fear and prevailed. She remained near Max, of course, but something in that storm had changed her. Her hands were shaking, and it felt like the walls she had built herself to keep her safe were slowly falling away. It was the first time Bella ever explored without caution. She trotted through the house, sniffing everything. She stopped hiding away when visitors arrived. Instead, she stayed next to Max, her tail moving slowly back and forth, but with interest. The man realized the difference right away. "Looking brave, girl," he said one morning as he watched Bella stick her head out the back door without waiting for Max's lead. "You've got this." Bella turned back to him, the sparkle in her eyes. For the first time, she appeared to believe it as well. However, just as things appeared to be getting back to normal, life decided they still had one more test to tackle. One sunny afternoon, the man took Max and Bella to the park for the first time. The fresh air, the open space, it felt like freedom. Max raced ahead, exuberantly pursuing a stick. Bella stuck close for the first few venturous moments, her eyes roaming the new surroundings. Then something pulled her attention, a group of kids kicking a ball. Bella froze, her body tense. She had always been cautious about sudden movements, and the chaos of the children's game appeared to be overwhelming. The man sunk watching, prepared to step in if necessary. But before he could get there, Max walked up behind Bella and gently nudged her. "Well, you're okay," his eyes seemed to say. "Come on, it's fun." Bella hesitated for a moment, and then to everyone's surprise, she stepped forward, and then another step. Gradually, she approached the children, her tail wagging cautiously. The children saw her and immediately hesitated, confused. But when Bella sniffed the ball and playfully barked, they erupted in laughter. "Can she play with us?" one of the kids said, staring at the man. He smiled. "Of course, just be gentle." And just like that, Bella became the dog in the game. As she chased down the ball, her tail sprouted its own personality, aggressively wagging a mile a minute, and her face lit up with pure expression. Max hovered nearby, watching over her as the big brother protective brother he always had been. The man did back, his heart soaring with pride. This was what he had envisioned for Bella, a day without fear, with joy and community. When it was getting dark, the man said, "Max and Bella." The bond they had was stronger than ever now, and they ran back side by side. The car ride home was silent, but this time not for fear of death. It was the stillness that follows a perfect day. At home, Bella stretched next to Max on the couch. He had his right arm draped over her, and she leaned her head into him, eyes half shut. The other man sat down next to them, stroking Bella's head. "You've made it so far," he said gently, "and we are just getting started." Max licked Bella's ear, a silent vow that he always would be, no matter what. The way forward wasn't without its challenges. There would still be moments of fear, of hesitation. But having Max by her side and the man's constant support, Bella was discovering what it was to trust again. And more than that, what it was to really live. For the first time, her past didn't feel like a burden she had to bear. It felt like something she had lived past, together. The subsequent days after Bella's big breakthrough at the park were magical. Every morning, she woke up with a new sense of confidence. She no longer paused at the door before stepping outside, and she didn't need Max to take the first step for her anymore. Bella was coming into her own voice, her own power. Yet just when everything finally appeared to be in place, life put a hurdle in their path. It occurred on a quiet afternoon. The man was taking Max and Bella on one of their favorite walks, a quiet trail that threaded through a nearby forest. The air was cool, leaves stirring in the breeze. Max ran ahead with his tail wagging. Bella kept close, taking in the fresh air and the sound of leaves cracking under her paws. Everything was just right, until a loud bang split the quiet. A falling branch crashed nearby, just a few feet away. Bella froze with panic in her eyes. It was a noise she was familiar with a little too intimately, a noise that took her back to the nights she spent by herself out on the streets, hiding from threats. The man spun around, his gaze locked on Bella. "It's all right, Bella," he told her, his voice even and steady. "It's just a branch." But Bella wasn't listening. Her body went stiff, and before anyone could stop her, she sprinted into the trees. "Bella," the man said, his heart pounding. He turned to Max. "Find her, Max!" Max sprinted after Bella, strong legs swinging over the thick mat of the forest floor. He had always protected her, and he wasn't about to let her go through this alone. The man hurried after, eyes flicking through the forest. He could feel it beating in his chest, fear clawing at him with every step. "Bella," he called once more, his voice ringing across the trees. And then, suddenly, as panic started to poise him for a set of barks, he heard a bark. Not just any bark. Max's bark. The man dashed toward the sound, parting the thick branches until he came to them. Between these trees stood Bella, shivering, eyes dilated with terror. Max was standing close by her side, his body pressed protectively against hers. As his calm presence soothed her once more, the man knelt down, his heart wrenching in his chest as he saw the fear in Bella's eyes. "You're okay, Bella," he said softly, his hand on her head. "You're safe. Max found you." Bella turned to him, then to Max. Gradually, her breath returned to normal. She nestled up against Max, finding strength in him again. The man stayed there, speaking softly and reassuringly until Bella was calm, which took some time. "You're stronger than you think," he whispered. "You've already come so far." Bella's eyes softened, and for the first time since she took off, she wagged her tail, a small but potent sign that she was ready to move on. They made their way back to the trail, with Max never leaving Bella's side. At home, Bella lay curled up on her bed, exhausted but at peace. Max lay next to her, his eyes fluttering shut as he rested his head on her shoulder. The man sat nearby, watching them with a profound sense of gratitude. "You saved her today," he said gently to Max. "You're always her hero, you know." The ear of Max twitched in response, as if he understood every word. Bella sighed in relief, her body surrendering at last. She knew that she'd faced her fear and that she survived it. Because of Max. Simply because of the unbreakable bond they had. The man smiled, and his heart was full. "We'll confront whatever lies ahead," he said. "Together." And in that moment, with these newfound friendships and family around her, Bella knew one thing for sure. She wasn't going to have to face anything alone anymore. The morning after the forest incident, Bella seemed different, calmer, more confident. It was like the spring had sprung in her brain. It would be the first time she greeted the day without the slightest hesitation. The man recognized it immediately. "You're ready for something different, aren't you?" he said, smiling as he looked at Bella, who was standing by the front door, slowly wagging her tail. Max sat next to her, eyes bright and approving. Today wasn't just any day. It was the day the man was doing something special, taking them to the dog-friendly beach. A salty breeze blew, and the sound of crashing waves surrounded them as they stepped out. The beach was ringing with cheerful yips and laughter. As soon as Max arrived, he dashed into the water, thrashing in the shallow surf with exuberance. Bella faltered at first, looking around at the alien tableau. But then she always turned to Max. He dutifully barked at her and wagged his tail for encouragement. Bella stepped forward, her paws sinking into the cool sand. One step, and another, and another. And just like that, she was running. It was slow at first, careful, measured steps. But then something clicked. As she ran, her ears perked up in the wind and pure joy shone in her eyes. Her body relaxed, then exploded into a canyon free run. The man watched in awe. "Go, Bella," he said, chuckling as she sprinted toward Max, her tail flapping like a flag. The two dogs splashed through the water, chased each other along the beach. For the first time, Bella was not only trailing Max, she was out front. It was a lovely sight to behold. As the sun started to lower, the three of them sat on the sand and watched the waves lap at the shore. Bella was resting beside Max, her head on his back. The man was close, stroking her fur gently. "You're not the same dog that came into the shelter," he said in a soft voice. "You're a much stronger version of that." Bella was staring up at him with serene, steady eyes. The fear was gone, and all that remained was trust, love, and a deep and abiding power that had been forged along every step of her path. Max licked at her ear, a nonverbal vow that he would remain Bella's companion. The man grinned, his heart swelling. "This is only the beginning," he said, as the last rays of sunlight slipped below the horizon. "There is so much more out there for us." That night, back at the house, Bella pawed her place on the couch next to Max, her breathing easy. She was not just surviving anymore. She was thriving. And for the first time in a long time, the future looked bright. because no matter what happened next, they would do it together. Life had settled into a gorgeous rhythm for Max, Bella, and their new family. Every day was filled with long walks, chasing in the backyard, and peaceful evenings curled up together on the couch. Bella had blossomed into a confident, happy dog. The timid dog who had once cowered behind Max was now leading the way in every adventure. But life can challenge even the closest relationships. One evening, the man noticed something strange. Max, usually more animated than a wind-up toy, seemed tired. He moved slower than usual, his steps careful and deliberate. Initially, the man believed it was merely exhaustion, as Max had run hard at the park earlier that day. But by the following morning, it was clear something was amiss. Max didn't jump up to greet the man standing at the door like he always would. He lay on his bed with shallow breaths and dull, tired eyes. Bella sat next to him, her body rigid, her eyes filled with concern. The man's heart clenched. "Come on, buddy," he said softly, crouching beside Max. "Let's get you checked out." The drive to the vet was silent. Bella snuggled against Max, laying her head on his shoulder as if to say, "I'm here. You're not alone." At the clinic, the vet performed several tests while the man waited anxiously. Bella refused to leave Max's side, her eyes never leaving him for a second. After what seemed like forever, the vet returned, looking serious. "Max has a condition typical for dogs his age," the vet explained. "It's treatable with meds and care, but he'll need rest and regular checkups." The man nodded, relief washing over him. It wasn't the best news, but it wasn't the worst either. Max was strong. He could handle this. Back at home, the man made a cozy spot for Max by the window, where he could lay down and watch the world go by. Bella stayed near him, refusing to leave his side. In the days that followed, Bella became Max's guardian, just as he had once been hers. She brought him toys, nudging them gently toward him. She sat beside him at meals, urging him to eat. When Max grew tired, she lay down next to him, her body held protectively against his. "You're the best, Bella," the man said one evening, watching her care for Max with such tenderness. "You've learned so much from him, and now you're returning it all." Bella wagged her tail, her eyes bright with determination. She wasn't leaving Max to go through this solo, not after all he'd done for her. Gradually, but not without effort, Max started recovering. His strength returned slowly, and his eyes grew brighter each day. One morning, Bella barked with so much excitement at the front door, wagging her tail almost maniacally. The man opened it to find Max standing next to her, his tail wagging too. It was the first time in days that Max had gotten out of bed without prompting. The man smiled, misty-eyed with emotion. "You're a fighter, Max," he said, bending down to hug him. "Both of you are." Max licked his face, his eyes shining with gratitude. Bella barked excitedly, nuzzling Max's neck. Together they stood, mightier together than they could ever be alone. The man watched them, his heart full of pride and love. "Whatever happens next," he said gently, "we'll do it together, just like we always do." And in that moment of blinding love and steadfast strength, it was clear their connection, unbreakable and unwavering, was the greatest gift of all. The house was once again alive with light and laughter. Max was full of life again, and Bella appeared as happy as she'd ever been. The scare they'd felt had just brought the two of them closer. Bella followed Max everywhere, just like old times. The man sat where he often sat on the porch next to them, or the world rolled by the house on their heads. They were so immersed in each other's stories that there was no need for work. But Bella had a new role to play. She was no longer just Max's companion. She was his guardian. She kept a close eye on him, knowing when he needed a rest and when he was ready to play. She matched him, step for step, every action deliberate. One day, the man took them to their favorite park. The air was warm, the sun shining. Max walked next to Bella, his pace slower than before, but steady. Bella remained close, never taking her eyes off him, checking to make sure he was all right. Once they got into the open field, Bella barked and bolted in a burst of energy. She spun around, waiting for Max to catch up. At first, Max hesitated. The man waited to see when Max's strength was able to endure. Then something extraordinary happened. Max started running with a burst of determination, his tail wagging. It wasn't as fast as it once was, but it didn't matter. He ran with Bella, their rhythms legato and in unison, joy radiating from them in waves. People at the park stopped to watch. Some smiled, others patted away tears. And yet, there was also something magical about seeing these two dogs there. Something that spoke of resilience, strength, and love, powerful enough to endure anything. Pride welled up in the man's heart. "That's my team," he said, eyes misty. "Unstoppable." Eventually, Max slowed down and flopped on the grass, his chest pumping in and out steadily. Bella lay down next to him, placing her head on his back. The man sat cross-legged on the grass alongside them. "You've taught me more than I ever thought possible," he said quietly, eyeing both dogs. "It's about loyalty. It's about strength. It's about never giving up." Max licked his hand, his eyes wide with silent appreciation. Bella nuzzled closer, her tail wagging slowly. Cheryl, her son, and his girlfriend all sat together as the sun began to set, and the evening sky turned to shades of pink and orange. The world was peaceful. The air was sweet with fresh grass and flowers in bloom. "We've gone through a lot," the man said. "But whatever happens, we have each other. That's all we'll ever need." Bella and Max appeared to agree. They leaned toward him, bodies warm and steady, their bond impervious. And for the first time in ages, the future felt like a wide open field, full of possibilities, full of light. The journey forward wouldn't be easy, but together they could overcome anything. Just as life seemed to settle into a perfect rhythm, something unexpected happened, something that would test everything Max, Bella, and their new family had built. It started on a quiet Saturday morning. The man was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping his coffee while Max and Bella lay peacefully at his feet. The house was filled with calm, the kind of calm that had taken months to build. But then, the doorbell rang. Bella's ears perked up immediately. She stood, her body tense, her eyes fixed on the front door. Max followed her lead, his expression calm but watchful. The man opened the door to find a stranger standing on the porch, a woman in her early 40s, holding a folder in her hands. "Hi, are you the owner of Max and Bella?" she asked with a warm but curious smile. The man nodded slowly. "Yes. Can I help you?" The woman hesitated before speaking. "I'm from a local animal welfare group. We've been following up on cases involving rescued dogs, and I believe Max and Bella were part of a situation we were monitoring some time ago." The man's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" The woman took a deep breath. "They were part of an illegal breeding operation before they were found. We've been trying to trace the origins of several dogs from that operation, and it appears that Max and Bella might be connected to something much larger." Bella moved closer to Max, her body leaning into him for support. The man's grip tightened on the doorframe. "Are they in danger?" he asked, his voice steady but filled with concern. The woman shook her head. "No, they're safe with you. But there's something you should know. Max's role in protecting Bella might have been more than just instinct. He may have saved her from something truly terrible." The man looked down at Max, his heart swelling with emotion. "I already knew he was a hero," he said softly. The woman smiled. "He is, but it also means they've been through more than most dogs ever should. It's remarkable how far they've come." The man nodded, thanking her before gently closing the door. He turned to find Bella and Max sitting side by side, watching him with curious eyes. He knelt down, wrapping his arms around both of them. "You've both been through so much," he whispered. "But you made it. You survived." Bella licked his face, her eyes shining with trust and love. Max leaned into him, his tail wagging softly. The man sat on the floor with them for a long time, lost in thought. He couldn't change their past, but he could give them the future they deserved. A future filled with safety, love, and endless adventures. Later that day, the three of them went for a long walk. The air was cool and crisp, the sunlight filtering through the trees. Max and Bella walked side by side, their steps perfectly in sync. "You're not just dogs," the man said with a smile. "You're family." Bella barked happily, and Max followed suit. It was as if they understood every word. And as they made their way down the trail, the man felt something he hadn't felt in years: peace. No matter what the future held, he knew one thing for certain. Together, they could face anything. For a time, life resumed itself. Max and Bella blossomed, living each day to the fullest, going for their daily walks, relishing the afternoons on the porch, sharing their evenings alongside their new family, warmth and love all around. But just as they thought they had weathered the storm, life threw them another curveball. Then one afternoon, the animal welfare group called the man. It was the same woman who had come before. "We found out more about Max and Bella," she said, her tone calm but with gravity. "It's nothing dangerous or anything, but it's the kind of thing you'll want to hear in person." The man agreed to meet her at the local animal shelter the following day. He hung up the phone with a lot of questions swirling around in his mind. What else could there be? The next morning, he loaded Max and Bella into the car and drove to the shelter. Volunteers gently spoke the names of the dogs they walked and the chirp of the room of the places where they worked. A woman answered the front door with a warm but grave look. "Thank you for coming," she said, gesturing for him to enter a small office. Bella and Max walked discreetly beside, their eyes observing the room as though it were a new animal. Inside, the woman sat and opened a folder on her desk. "We have been doing a deeper dive on the case," she started, "and we have found something amazing. Max and Bella were more than critters of the street. They're members of the family. Siblings." The man blinked. His mind raced to grasp this information. "Wait, they're related?" The woman nodded. "Yes. We traced their origins to the same place and found records that verified they were born in the same litter." Max and Bella sat innocently at his feet, blissfully unaware of the bombshell. "That explains everything," he whispered. "Their bond, their connection. It was never friendship. It was never that. It was something deep." The woman smiled. "Exactly. Siblings don't often have bonds like this. What they've been through has only made it stronger." The man walked out of the shelter that day with a new perspective on Max and Bella. They were always more than just two dogs unconditionally attached to one another. They were family in the truest sense. The man sat with them on the porch at home, grateful. "You've always known, haven't you?" he said, scratching Max's ears. He leaned into Bella, her tail thumping lightly. The man could not stop smiling. At last, the pieces of their story had added up. Every step of their journey, every challenge, every victory had brought them to this. As the sun slowly set, frosted in oranges and pinks across the sky, Max and Bella lay together side by side, their breath slow and deep. The man gazed at them, his heart filling with love and pride. "You have always been more than just pets," he said softly. "Your family, and no one can take that away from you." Bella lowered her heavy head onto Max's back, shutting her eyes as the last rays of day slipped behind the horizon. Max let out a soft sigh, tail gently wagging in agreement. It was a long and winding road behind them, but they had made it together. And now, their future has never been brighter, because some bonds really are unbreakable. The time after Max and Bella's real relationship was found was nothing less than enchanted. The man had felt like he finally unlocked the last piece of a puzzle that had been staring him in the face. The fact that they were siblings only made his admiration for their bond all the more appreciative. Bella appeared to feel the shift. She'd always been close to Max, but now she hardly left his side. They reunited and played with a burst of energy, their glee infectious. It was a new way of seeing each other, a new kind of love, something amenable to this little teacup-lined Vermont cabin, to all their winks and nuzzles and morning coos, something almost sacred about it. The man beamed as the warmth in his chest felt whenever he saw them sleeping together, curled up in their favorite spot by the window. "You've been through so much," he would say to them, "but you made it, together." For all their happiness, the second the man turned toward Max, he noticed how the dog was lagging behind again. His steps were slower and more deliberate, and he rested more frequently. Bella seemed to notice too. She grew more vigilant, her gaze following him, waiting for an opportunity to give him a hand. One night, while sitting on the porch watching the sunset, the man bent over and scratched Max on his head. "You've given a lot, buddy," he said quietly. "You've always looked after Bella. Now, it's our turn to care for you." Max licked his palm, gaze full of gratefulness. Bella lay next to him, her head resting on his back, her eyes serene but alert. The man stayed with them until stars filled the sky, the air cool and still. And in that moment of stillness, he found tranquility. They had come so far, further than anyone had imagined. But life is always full of surprises. The next morning, when they got ready to take another walk, Max paused at the door. His body felt heavier than normal, and his breathing was slow. Bella was standing next to him with worry in her eyes. The man knelt beside Max, his hand on his side. "You okay, buddy?" he asked in a steady voice laced with concern. Max wagged his tail feebly as he leaned against the man's touch. Bella reached in close, her frame tense but relaxed, as though to say to Max, "It's fine." "I'm here." Firmly, the man canceled the walk, allowing Max to rest. In the living room, he laid down a cozy nest for himself, Bella all snuggled against him. The house was silent, the atmosphere tense with unuttered fear. He squatted on the floor, studying the two of them intently. But fear pushed the ache away at the thought of what could be coming. "We'll go day by day," he said gently. "We will be right there with you, no matter what." Bella squeezed her eyes shut, her body plastered protectively against Max's. Max took a deep breath, slow but steady. The man remained with them until the late hours of the night, running his fingers through Max's soft fur, whispering words of love and gratitude. The stars twinkled outside, their light spilling softly into the house, a sign that no matter how grim the situation, there is always hope. Because that wasn't the end of their story. Not yet. And then what happened next would change everything again. The house was serene, doused in the gentle golden glow of late afternoon. Max was lying at peace on their favorite spot on the window, Bella lying right next to him. The man sat close, smiling patiently as they played. "I've always known you would look out for each other," he said gently. "And from the streets to this home, you've been each other's greatest strength." Max's breathing was slow but even, his eyes half open to the warmth of the home they had built together. Bella nestled up against him, her body fitting into his, her eyes wise and gentle. The man knew moments like this were few and far between. Each day with Max and Bella was a gift, a testament to how far they had come. Max sighed softly, giving a tiny wag of his tail. Bella gently licked his ear, the way she would say, "I'm here, always." The man knelt next to them, his palm on Max's head. "You've been a hero since I met you," he whispered, his voice firm and laced with emotion. "And you've taught me more about love, strength, and resilience than I ever knew was possible." Max wagged his tail one last time, his eyes glazed with peace. Bella remained beside him, not leaving his side, her unwavering loyalty once again shining through. And in that moment, in between the whispers of love, Max closed his eyes. The house fell silent. The man lingered a long time, gently petting Max's fur between the amber streaks, his heart heavy but filled with gratitude. "You're always part of us," he said softly, "in every step we take, in every memory we share. Thank you, Max, for all the things." Bella leaned her head on Max's back, her eyes closing as the air surrounded them with an insurmountable feeling of tranquility. Sitting like that for hours, every so often they would pull away to look at each other again, her steady presence a reminder of the unwavering bond they had from the very beginning. In the days that followed, life crept along. In time, Bella adjusted to the changes, putting a little more patchwork on her heart each day, the way she held herself with quiet strength, just like Max had taught her. One evening, Bella was sitting on the porch when she glanced up to the sky. The stars were shining, just as they had on countless nights before. "He's still watching over us," the man said quietly, rubbing Bella's head. "And he always will." Bella wagged her tail. Her gaze was calm and steady. It was as if she understood each and every word. The man smiled. "We have so many adventures in front of us, Bella. Max would want us to go on, to enjoy life to the fullest." Bella whooped in affirmation, and her eyes glimmered with purpose. The camera stays on Bella, silhouetted against the darkening sky. "If there's one thing Max and Bella's story has taught me," the man says, his voice quavering with emotion, "it's that love and loyalty can conquer all. Some bonds transcend time, distance, even loss. Some bonds are truly unbreakable." The audience is left with one last image. Bella sitting up, proud eyes fixed on the horizon, ready to take on whatever is next. Thank you for watching. Until next time, stay kind, stay compassionate, and always believe in second chances.